Welcome. Hello. Episode 15. We made it to, I think it's a milestone number, guys, of the Second Look Sports Show. I'm Alex Mandarino. As always, I'm joined by Brandon Brown and Justin Arnberg. And it is opening day. Today, Thursday, March 20, probably should know this, 5th? 7th. Boom. We're on fire today. We're grinding. It is opening day. It will be opening day the day prior to you listening to this episode tomorrow on Friday. But we're pretty excited about kind of kicking baseball off. There's been a lot of spring season. There's been some storylines for the Blue Jays along with some of the other teams in the MLB. But opening day is always fun, mainly because they name this first day of the year. Like, I don't know if any other sports actually have a name for their opening of the regular season. It's just like day one of the NHL or day one of the NFL or week one. I'm always really excited. They kind of name it. What do you guys think? Like, Justin, we'll go to you. Are you excited for opening day to kind of give you chills? Like, how do you feel the first day of baseball?
I don't know. I don't really have chills for this sport until it's playoff time because there's so many games. Like this summer, it's gonna be all just baseball, and I get that. But like, it's just to me, it's 162 games is a lot. But I will say, between games 10 to probably 100, they don't really like. That's not the same energy to me. Games 1 through 10 because of the new vibe, like you're saying, and then games like 100 through 62, the playoff push. I feel like those are the most entertaining games to watch. So that's how I feel about it.
Fair. Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm definitely excited, but I do want to see kind of how the MLB is received after they had their first couple of games played last week in Tokyo. Yeah. So I think with that, it kind of, you get excited for those games. You know, they had the Dodgers and the Cubs play a couple games. I was, excited to watch some of that, but it kind of dampers at least a little bit of the opening day vibes for me. I'm excited to watch the Jays play. Hopefully they get off to a good start and we can get something good to be excited about this summer. But yeah, I feel like it's already kind of gotten underway, and now we're like, okay, now we've waited a little bit longer and now we're here. So it's exciting, but it's also like, hey, let's get it going. So
Yeah, that was one of the points that I was curious about, was like they had 2 games in Tokyo, the Cubs and the Dodgers, right? Like you said, and it's cool to kind of kick that off, but then you kind of look at the schedule, and I don't know, I like seeing the standings and seeing zeros beside everybody and winning that first game and then making the joke of like, oh, the Jays won their first game, like they're first in the AL East, like this might not last. But is it weird? Do you think it's cool that they're introducing these games in Tokyo? It's not the first time that sports has done this. I know the NHL has done this in different countries in the past to kind of kick off their season. Is it cool, or is it kind of, does it diminish opening day for you guys, do you think?
I like wanted to just say, like, I think we mentioned about this like a couple episodes ago or last episode, and I liked Brandon's idea of like taking like 6 to 8 teams over there and kind of like doing like a little, like, not tournament, but like a little actual like series in terms of games instead of just 2 games, because or taking a division, I think is what Brandon said, which that would be the really cool thing to do, is if you took a division and everyone played like 2 to 3 games over there. That'd be cool. But right now it's not. I personally don't think it's the best, because you're only getting 2 games, and then everyone has to, because of the time difference, and you're trying to get reacclimated to your time zone when you come back to the States. It's not the best, but I do understand the appreciation that Japan has for the sport, and I do understand why they go there, like why they make it a point of interest of going there, no matter if it's just for 2 games or not.
Yeah, like I think you could get a little bit more excitement and build the anticipation if you did it a little bit later in the year instead of doing it right at the beginning of the season. Gives people a little bit of chance to kind of get back into the vibe of baseball, and then you're kind of looking forward to, that series, or if it's a tournament style, or like we said, multiple teams playing over there, you can kind of build up your anticipation throughout the season, and then maybe it's like, oh, June, we've got this cool Tokyo series kind of going on. But instead it's like you're excited about opening day, and then you're kind of excited about these, it feels like preseason games, but they're not preseason games, so like it can kind of get a little confusing. So yeah, I think that would be a little bit better if they could figure out a way to get that going kind of in season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I always, watch opening day. I always get really excited about it. And then probably after like 4 or 5 straight games of like, I'm going to watch every game this year, I think the reality kicks in and I'm like, there's 162 games. So how
Yeah.
long is the runway do you guys think you're going to watch straight Jays games? I know, Brandon, you're working, so you have sort of no choice, but it'll be kind of a cool experience to work and watch the game. How many games in a row to kick off the season do you think you guys can watch before you maybe say, I might need a break so I can watch the playoffs properly?
It depends on this team, I feel like.
Iteration of the team? Yeah, that's a good point.
If the team starts winning, I feel like it's going to be more likely that I'm going to tune into every game. But that team is losing, I'm just going to look at the highlights and say, oh, look at there. Vladdy just added an extra $5 million to his contract with that home run. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be, and I kind of want to see like the interviews and like stuff all pregame and stuff with Vlad going to every single city. I want to see if he says he's open for business. Like, I want to see how this all develops.
All of it.
Because it's going to be
Yeah.
a massive, massive distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always fun to kind of like, I think Alex, you brought it up in a good way. It's like, how many games can you watch to start the season? Because
Yeah.
we all know nobody's out here watching 162 games. And after about 30 or 40, I'd say that you can kind of get a good idea of where the Jays will be at. So I think that April schedule will be maybe the most interesting this year for the Jays. Unless they are able to get off to a really good start, then people will continue to watch throughout the summer and maybe we'll get some good, exciting baseball closer to fall. But I think Justin's right. Like the Vladdy contract negotiations and even the Bo Bichette situation, that's probably going to be the most interesting thing in terms of how that relates to what the team is presenting on the field and what we're looking at in terms of their future projections. Yeah, I'll probably watch a few of the first couple of games with a lot of intent, and then after that we'll just kind of have to see how things play out.
What about you?
Yeah,
What
I think
about you?
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'll probably watch like this weekend if I can. I'll watch today. I'll probably try and tune in a little bit tomorrow and Saturday, depending on the times of the games. I know Friday it'll be later, and then Saturday it'll probably be. I think it's a 3 p.m. tip off, or not tip off, but first pitch. And that's how dialed I am to baseball right now. It's just it seems like such a big switch with baseball and basketball and hockey still going. But I am very excited for opening day. Probably after opening weekend, then I'll probably start setting the times of like, when can I actually watch? It's hard to watch a game every single night, but we'll try and find the time because it'll be exciting to kind of kick off the year. I'll probably be attending more games this year than before. We'll get into that maybe after the break, like the over under amount of games that we'll probably try and go to this year.
Nice.
So
I
we can kick that off. Yeah.
I was gonna say, why this year compared to other years though?
Oh, just not. I think just like ability to do so. I mean, the team's going to probably be okay. We can get into that with our guest who I'll introduce in a second, that we'll throw to him. But it's more just like I live downtown now, so it's accessible down here. I'm hoping it's just like a nice summer. It's sunny while we're recording this now, so the mindset's there to just go to more games. I know a few friends have bought like the leadoff package again, where you basically get like, I think it's like $185. You get the first 2 or 3 months, including weekend games this year, which was not the case last year. So I'm just excited, maybe optimistic, and maybe my views will change, like you said, Brandon, 30, 40 games in, when you really see what the team looks like.
I think that is a valid point. I'm hoping to at least go to 5. I'd say 5.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know.
If we're doing it, I'll go like, I'm thinking 10 for sure, 10 this year. That's the idea.
Yeah, I'm probably closer to the 5 number just because you guys know I'm a little bit further out from the city. It's not as easy to get there all the time, and I got to really plan sometimes to go. But I think this year, like, I'm really excited about the summer and the weather coming up, and part of that is just getting out to as many games as possible. So I think I'll definitely try to get out to as many as I can. I think a handful through the season, maybe get some opportunities to go to some games that you're not expecting. So that would be fun too. We'll see how it goes. It should be fun.
Yeah. Do you guys want to do a little draft here right before we kick it to our guest?
What kind of draft? You're throwing me off here, Justin. What kind of draft?
You guys just brought up summer, so I was just gonna say let's just draft summer things. Like,
okay,
what makes summer the best, or what's the best thing in summer? We'll do 3 rounds. So snake draft. Brandon goes first because he's the one who bringing it up. So Brandon, number 1 overall pick, summer. What is it?
The warm weather. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's okay. Fine. Go second.
That is a big one.
Go second.
You want me to go second?
Yeah, go second.
I'm gonna go with like patio beers. Just drinks on the patio.
That should have been number 1 overall. Patio
drinks for me is number 1.
I was gonna say outdoor, lake, on the lake. That's my first pick. Second pick, I'm going ice cream. Ice cream in the summer. It's amazing.
I'm an ice cream at all times person, but I understand the appeal. So you said lake. Can I take cottage, or is that too close to lake?
That's like lake and cottage is like the same thing. Like
they're the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Yeah, that's what my first pick.
Okay, I'm gonna say concerts, because concerts outside in the summer are a lot more fun. I didn't go to one last year, but I would say if there's someone in mind that I'm going to this summer, then that would be fun. Like Budweiser stage in Toronto is awesome. So I'd say outdoor concerts I always really enjoy. I'm gonna take that one.
Yeah, I mean, nobody said baseball yet, so let's go with that.
It's probably good.
And then let's see, for my final pick, I was thinking like just this, like the city in the summer, like Toronto.
Yeah,
strolling around. Justin, I know last year was your first chance to do that in Toronto for a longer period. Hopefully you get more time to do that this year as well. But checking out the city, being in like just kind of the vibes in the summer are a lot different than what we get in the long winter. So I'd say the period of that and getting downtown and getting to experience the vibes in the summer is something that I always love to enjoy as well.
Yeah, those are two really solid back-to-back picks that I was thinking. And we couldn't have not drafted baseball after talking about it. If baseball didn't go drafted, I would have felt weird. So that was smart. A personal one is playing beach volleyball, because I like to play it during the year, but I know that's really niche. So I think I'm just going to say they're swimming in like water. I'm not a huge beach person. The beach is cool, but I think it's overrated. I do just think the opportunity to like swim, whether it's in a pool, whether it is at a lake or something, like swimming in a general sense is awesome. And in the winter inside, it just doesn't hit the same. So I'm going to go with like the opportunity just to swim outside.
I'm going to say
finish this off.
You guys missed out on a good one. I'm actually sad I didn't think about this sooner, but my draft is elite.
Okay.
Barbecuing.
That's a good one.
Barbecuing in the
summer, solid.
That you guys, we all missed that, but overall, solid draft. I love my team. I absolutely think my team's the best. My team kicks your guys' ass every situation on the floor. Doesn't matter. Pitch, floor, field, rink, doesn't matter. We win.
You can take it. I mean, we probably should have prepared for this. We probably would have come up with a better summer draft, but
no, you don't have to prepare.
I do feel confident. There's too many things to count in the summer that you're gonna end up missing something. There's like three or four undrafted that are pretty upset. They're probably talking to Kyle Bukauskas right now. Really upset and probably hoping to go in the second round of the draft on day 2. But we'll see. In any case, solid stuff, pumping me up for the summer. Someone who's probably going to go to way more games, or at least cover more games than we all discuss combined, is Zach Worden, associate editor at Sportsnet. Covers a lot for MLB focused and baseball focused, including the Jays. And we'll talk to him all things Jays. So we'll throw to him now to kind of kick off the opening day for the Blue Jays and what's in store for the team in Toronto. Pleased to be joined on opening day. I know everyone will be listening to this the day after, but for us, it is opening day, March 27th. We have Zach Worden, associate editor at Sportsnet, writer, contributor at Just Baseball, and co-host of Bird's Eye View podcast. He does it all. Check him out. Zach, we're happy to have you. Thank you for joining us and appreciate you taking some time out of what's probably going to be an exciting and busy day. And before we get to the first question, I just want to tee up the fact that it is opening day and it's exciting for most, probably more exciting for someone like yourself who focuses a lot and enjoys baseball to the utmost. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Opening day. Where does opening day rank on your sports calendar? Like, is it near the top of all sports days of the year? Is it the bottom? Is it the middle? Where would you say opening day ranks on like your list of sports days?
I think it's got to be right near the top. I think the feeling of opening day is kind of different than most other days on the sports calendars. I think, the clean slate, the optimism, hope springs eternal. And it's the day where you wake up, you don't need any coffee, you're jazzed to get going. There's games on all day. It's just really exciting. I know kind of everybody loves the playoffs and everything like that, but I just think the way that you wake up on opening day after a long winter, the feeling of spring, opening day is got to be, like, honestly, probably my favorite day of the baseball calendar.
I love that. I love that. Just quickly, Justin, I got one here. Is it different this year than other years based on the projections for the Toronto Blue Jays, would you say? Or do you feel like every opening day is about the same for you? How do you feel this one specifically?
Yeah, it's interesting with the Blue Jays because of how last year went. But I think every year you come into it with that feeling of optimism. So I think for me, they all kind of feel the same just because it's back. You get to see the good weather all over the US. You get to see the sun, you get to see, just the freshness of everybody coming out. And obviously the Blue Jays are entering this year with a lot of pressure, I guess you can put it that way. There's a lot riding on this season, to put it lightly, and that'll certainly pick up, I think, as the season goes on. But at least for today, the sentiment is that baseball is back, and we can kind of be happy with that before diving into what it means that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not extended.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, because he's asking, is opening day is the best moment of the year? But you have to agree, 162 games is a lot of games. Like, is there a certain point in the season? We said, like, before you came on, maybe 30 to 40 games in. That's kind of where the benchmark is once you figure out what the team is. That, like, those middle games kind of drag, like, until you get to, like, the last 60 games of the season where the playoffs push, like, really can start to happen. Like, that middle part, is it dragging for a baseball fanatic like yourself, or is it just like every day is pure joy for you?
Man, it is a grind. I know, obviously, more so for the guys who have to go out and put on the field every day. But you know what, man, I just love it. Like, the sport, I love the 162, the day in, day out, the kind of routine based nature of the sport, and just kind of everything that comes with it. It's so different than every other sport out there, based on how often these guys have to post and bring their best to the field every day. I just love kind of the way that baseball is laid out. And yeah, it's easy because sometimes for us, like, we don't have to watch all 162, right? So if you're kind of feeling like you're not feeling it one day, you can just, flip the TV off to something else. You can put it out of your mind. But no, man, I love the grind. I love kind of watching day in, day out, and just kind of being able to follow all the different storylines from, realistically, like, February through the end of October.
What about Zach in person? How many games this year you think you'll be at Rogers Center for? Do you have an average, or is it just depend on the year, or how do you think?
Well, I'm in Calgary, actually.
Okay.
We'll see. Hopefully I make it out for a few. I know, like, when I was going to school there, it was, we were reaching kind of the 20s and 30s for games attended. But no, like, I mean, I'll be out to Toronto hopefully a couple times. I'm hoping to make it out to Vancouver to see some games there again this summer.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I coach a little bit here, so around the diamond all the time. But yeah, we'll do our best to catch, hopefully, 100, 150 on TV, and hopefully maybe in person.
Nice. We'll start a crowd fund to get you down here for one of those games.
Appreciate it. That would be much appreciated. Yeah.
Let's talk some real baseball about the Toronto Blue Jays now. So coming into this season, they make, like, compared to last offseason, they made a lot of moves. Like, Jimenez coming in, Jeff Hoffman coming in, Santander, Scherzer, the list goes on and on, it feels like. Do you feel like the team or the front office made enough moves this offseason to put out a winning team or a playoff team for this season?
I think they got better. I don't think there's any question about whether they got better. I think you bring in a little bit of power. I know Russ Adkins called it low-hanging fruit at the end of last season, but really it was what the team needed. So you bring in Anthony Santander to kind of give you that. Andres Jimenez, I think at the time you kind of raised some eyebrows with that ad because it was the offense that they needed to address. But as far as where it kind of lands with the additions, I think it works out really well. He's a really great player. He's going to be great to watch defensively. He's, probably the best defender in the world right now. That's probably up to debate, but he's in the top 3 or 4 in that conversation. And then, Max Scherzer is going to be a really interesting storyline to watch. I think it's really exciting that you bring in a future Hall of Famer to kind of round out your rotation. But at the same time, right, there's so many question marks about his health and what he's going to be or how much he's going to be able to pitch for them. And we've kind of already seen the thumb issue flare up. And for an organization that doesn't have a ton of pitching depth, like maybe the name value wasn't the right move there, right? Like maybe you want to bring in a guy who's a little bit more reliable and is going to give you more innings, but it'll be interesting to see what he does. They definitely do need him to kind of be like a 120 to 130 inning guy, and so we'll see how that lands. I think it's gonna be really exciting to watch him pitch. I think his per inning stuff is gonna be really good, but for a team that's gonna need some more innings from the back end of the rotation, we'll see how it plays out, because there are so many question marks there.
Realistically, do you think he actually hits that threshold of like 130 innings, let's say?
130, I think, is going to be tough. I think after his first two spring starts where he's, striking out 5-6 guys through 2 innings both times, you're feeling really good about what he's going to be. And then he gets scratched from his next one with the thumb injury. And you're kind of like, oh, right, that's the issue there. So I think 130 might be pushing it. A great over under is probably around that 125 inning mark. I feel pretty confident that he'll be able to get over 100 and kind of get into that range. But I think when you're kind of reaching the 120s, 130s, that's where it's going to get a little questionable based on just where he's been so far this spring.
I'll let you go next, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to ask, you brought up Scherzer. I think that's a great point. Like people look to him as, a possible, I think, 4 or 5 option for this team. And it seems like they had hopes to even, I think he's pitching on Saturday. So I think that would have lined him up to, in the 3 hole there. With his injuries and where this might be headed, do you think that'll put more of a reliance on the bullpen? And where do you think that stands now after last year? I love the addition of being able to add Nick Sandlin in that Jimenez deal. I think he'll eat up a bunch of innings for them. Where do you see the status of the bullpen so far? And do you think they'll have to rely on that a ton?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's last year proved that even the best laid bullpen plans can kind of go awry. I know, obviously, in 2023, it was a top 5 bullpen group in baseball, and you feel really confident about it coming into 2024. And then you have, Eric Swanson go down, Jordan Romano go down, Tim Meza turn into one of the worst pitchers in baseball while he was in Toronto. And, so you enter this year feeling pretty good about it, right? Like the Hoffman edition is great. Sandlin edition, I like that one as well. As you mentioned there, bringing Jimmy back is great. But it's kind of like the same thing has snuck in a little bit, where you got like Eric Swanson starting on the IL. I don't think it's maybe that big of a deal that Zach Pop starting on the IL, but it's a pitcher who's hurt to start the year. And so, these guys who you probably didn't pencil in to the bullpen on January 20, like a Richard Lovelady and Jacob Barnes, all of a sudden are starting the year in the bullpen. Are the cracks already showing that way with this group? But I think the one thing that you can be pretty confident in is kind of that back end group with Hoffman and Garcia and Sandlin and Green. I think that there's a better core in place there than they had last year when it was kind of Romano, Swanson, and Meza, and obviously Garcia as well entering the year, but kind of, having a little bit more reliability with like 4 or 5 guys than like 3 or 4 will be really important. And I think, the one thing that's really good about the starting rotation outside of Scherzer is that the other 4 guys are going to give you so many innings over the course of the year, right? Like these are proven veterans who are likely going to give you 170 to 200 innings, which does kind of take a little bit of the load off your bullpen. So hopefully, those guys are able to make the 6, 7, 8 spots in your bullpen a little bit less important with having, as they throw so many innings. And then that does allow you to kind of lean on a Hoffman and a Garcia a little bit more in games that you're winning.
Talk a lot about starting pitching, the bullpen, who's available, who's not. And you talked about some of the guys that were on the IL to start the year. Another guy that we didn't mention is Alek Manoah. Successful a couple of seasons ago. He's starting on the 60-day IL. He did pitch, I think, for the first time off of a mound a couple of weeks ago, which is super encouraging for Jays fans who are a little, not quote-unquote nostalgic, but obviously remember the 2022 Cy Young runner-up Manoah. Do you think he can factor in this year in a prominent role, whether it be starter, bullpen, relief, whatever the case is? Or do you think it's a little bit overblown? Like, where do you see Alek Manoah fitting into this lineup when he gets healthy, hopefully a couple of months down the line?
Yeah, I think ideal world, we talk about Max Scherzer throwing, 120-ish innings. I think ideal world, Max Scherzer throws like 120 innings. It's September 1st. He's like not feeling good. Alek Manoah just jumps right in and takes his spot. I think ideal world, that's kind of what happens. I don't know, maybe even Scherzer's healthy and they can kind of go with like a 6-man when Alek Manoah is back. I think he will, be a factor at some point. He's a guy who I think took some steps maturity wise over the past year or so as he kind of, he got punched in the face, and it took him a long time to figure that out, right? Obviously 2023 coming off the 2022 season that you mentioned didn't go great. And then last season he makes his way back and he looks better. He doesn't look like 2022 Alek Manoah, but he definitely looks better. He looks like a guy who can contribute and be a major league pitcher again, which I think was a huge step, and really unfortunate that he does, kind of have to go under the knife and take this time away when he was making positive momentum. So can he be a positive contributor? I think so, and we'll kind of see how it goes. I think when you listen to him talk, he seems like he's really kind of settled into who he is and where his career is at, which I think is something that comes for all of us as we get older, right? So for him, as he gets older, I think we're going to see a little bit more maturity from him, and that's going to start this year. I think that he can come back. I don't know if the 2022 version of him will ever come back, but at least, he does have a solid group of veterans around him, like Max Scherzer, like Kevin Gausman, all these guys in the rotation, right, who can give him a good example of a point to get to in his career, even if it's not going to be the future Cy Young winner that we maybe thought he was in 2022.
I think when talking about the offense side, the defensive side of the ball, the one position the Blue Jays don't really have an answer for, or not a complete answer for, would be third base this year. What are your thoughts on that position? Do you think Ernie Clement's going to be okay there? Who do you think is going to be or end up playing the most time there this year?
Yeah, I think it'll be Ernie. I think Ernie is kind of in the same conversation as like Andres Jimenez and Dalton Varsho, where, he's not the top tier, top 5 defender in the league that those guys are, but he's probably one of the better defenders at the position in the American League. I think, he was a finalist for the Gold Glove last year, probably wins it, honestly, if he doesn't spend so much time at shortstop. I think he probably, has that hardware if he spends the entire season at third base. And so realistically, what you need from him is just to be like a league average bat. And he was pretty close to that last year. And I think if he can kind of stay at the same production level that he had in 2024 with the full-time role at third base, I think he's going to be a really valuable player. Although the thing with it there is that it does lack ceiling, right? Like the ceiling is basically what he gave last year with more playing time at third base. So the value would go up that way, just kind of having the positional certainty for him. But what you really want is somebody like Aurelvis Martinez or Addison Barger to be able to figure it out defensively so that they can kind of take hold of that position, because the ceiling on their bats is just so much higher. And for a team that has, such great defense, he fits in. Ernie fits in really well. But, I think if those guys, like one of those guys, could take a step and be able to at least, play a solid third base, like not even, you don't have to be Ernie Clement there. You don't have to be Nolan Arenado. You don't have to be Matt Chapman. You just have to be okay. And I think that there's a pathway for those guys to do that. But for what I'm expecting this year, I think it is going to kind of be Ernie's job, and they're going to let him run with it. And unless the bat completely falls off a cliff, I think we're going to see him there for 130 games this year.
So if we move one position to the left, we have the shortstop, Bo Bichette. And I don't think it's being talked about enough of how, like, Vlad obviously going to free agency, but like Bo's also going to free agency this offseason. Like, how much pressure do you think is on Bo himself to have a rebound year after having an absolute terrible 2024? And do you think, like, the Blue Jays, like, realistically, do you think the Blue Jays will re-sign him, or do you think, like, it's more likely that he's going to walk as well in free agency?
Yeah, I'll say that I don't think that there's anybody that puts more pressure on Bo Bichette than Bo Bichette. I think this is like, if there's anything we've learned about him during his time in Toronto, It's that he's a super motivated dude, right? And I think that's going to kind of play into what we see from him this year. We already saw it in spring training where he had like 20 hits in whatever 60 at bats or whatever it was. And he kind of looked more like himself. And obviously you don't want to read too much into spring training, but I think it was really important for him to come out and have a good spring after what happened last year. Especially, I think it's good that he hasn't maybe had the attention on him with all the Vlad stuff. So it's tough to say kind of what the expectation is, because I don't see them extending him like before the end of the year, because this is a guy who obviously is going to value himself as like an all-star level shortstop, and he's coming off a season that was decidedly not that. So how do you kind of align on value that way when he's coming off such a poor season? It's really tough from both sides. And I think Bo Bichette, his long-term future might not be at shortstop, and he's going to want to be paid as a shortstop, which also kind of complicates things. There's just so many complications with the Bo Bichette deal at this point. I think he's going to have a really strong season, which is going to, it's going to get him paid this offseason. He doesn't even have to have like an MVP level season. Like, he just has to be, the Bo Bichette that we've seen before, and he's probably talking $200 million this offseason, right? So
I was thinking the Willy Adames contract of this past year, 7 years, $180 million to San Francisco. That's the comparable that I thought of. But yeah, like if you think about what he's going to potentially make this offseason, you're saying like you don't think he has to be MVP, but like, do we need like an AL hit leader, I guess, like type season where he hits 200 plus balls and like is that leader in the AL, like, or are we expecting like, I don't know, 20 and 150? Like, is that kind of in the range that we're expecting this season? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd expect him to kind of be back to the Bo Bichette that we know is kind of like competing for the hits title for sure. I don't know if anybody's going to beat Bobby Witt. I think he had like 220 last year or something like that. It's going to be tough to beat that guy. But no, I think he's going to be back in the conversation. He's going to be back in the group of elite shortstops in baseball. And he's going to enter free agency with a lot of teams interested in his services, because he's super young too, right? Like, people forget that him and Vlad, Vlad's a year younger, but Bo is still 27, I believe, at this point. So, very young guy, going to be super sought after on the free agent market. And, even if the year isn't quite like, even if he, has a 270 average and has 160 hits or whatever, like, it's still going to be a guy that gets paid, because it's a really good baseball player and he produces elite exit velocities. The defense, you might have to move him off short eventually, but there's just kind of this bat in there that I think you feel really confident is going to age fairly well over, the next 5-6 years, and is going to be a productive big leaguer for a long time. And I think he's going to come out in like the first few weeks here and prove that 2024 was an aberration.
Yeah, and I mean, we obviously, with Bo and Vlad kind of getting the majority of the focus going into this year, I think kind of obviously was viewed as an important piece, but now has kind of fallen under the radar, it seems like, was the signing of Anthony Santander. 5 years, I think it was like 90 plus million. How important do you think he'll be in this lineup this year in terms of contributing to the offense? And is he kind of the guy to watch in the lineup, or is there anybody else that you're looking at as can be a spark plug and get these guys going again?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Santander. I think it was a great ad. Like, it kind of felt like he was the guy that they were going to add the entire offseason. I think, we entered the offseason talking about guys that they could go after. And obviously, you look at like Juan Soto and guys like that, but I think Santander kind of fits really well into what they needed. They needed some power, right? And I know, you talk to analytic types and they'll say that like lineup protection is a myth. And I kind of buy into that, but I also kind of don't. I think lineup protection is a real thing, and what he's going to do is make teams pitch to Vladdy a little bit more often, because you don't want to pitch to Anthony Santander with guys on base, right? Because of his threat to leave the yard. So I think he's going to come in and be really good for Vladdy. It's basically Teoscar, but switch hitting Teoscar, right? So you kind of bring back that power threat, a guy who's going to slot in, kind of sounds like in the 3 hole and be able to hit you 30 to 40 home runs, like almost guaranteed. So feel really good about that ad. I think he's going to be a really, really fun watch this year for a team that hasn't had a lot of fun hitters to watch over the past couple seasons.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Zach. Rodon comes in. I think I said that right. Rodon? Sorry, is it Roden?
Come on,
Roden, or is it Rodon? I don't know. It might be French. Alex Roden comes in. Alan Roden, comes into this spring training not expecting to make the team. Is a 25-year-old though, so you're kind of hoping that he would take that jump. He took it and grabbed it and ran with it, had the spring that no one expected, and made the team. What do you expect from him, and do you think he's actually going to get some legit playing time, or do you think this is going to be like, a Davis Schneider type thing where he was platoon, and Schneider's looking like he's going to be platoon again this year? So, like, are we looking at that, or are we looking at full-time playing time for Roden? Sorry.
Yeah, I think what John Schneider said is that if he made the team, he was going to get full reign. So I think what we're going to see is maybe not like a full-time playing share, but I think you're going to get to see him, 4 or 5 days a week for sure. I think we're going to see a lot of Alan Roden. I don't think it makes me unique that I love Alan Roden. He's the type of player that I love. Great control of the strike zone, has a little bit of power potential. Basically Spencer Horwitz, but I think there's a little bit more power potential for Roden. He's shown some better exit velocities, all the kind of boring stuff that people like to read into. And I think you kind of look at his swing, it's really unique. I think he's going to become a really interesting piece. I think basically what Spencer Horwitz gave them last year is what Roden is going to be able to provide with maybe a little bit more power. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he was like the leadoff hitter by June. I think that would be a really good fit for him because they kind of do lack like the modern day leadoff hitter type, and he kind of profiles that as a high OBP guy that can work counts, has really professional at bats. So I'm really excited for him. I think it's going to be, he's going to have a really great year. I don't want to say like AL Rookie of the Year type, but the AL Rookie of the Year conversation is realistically open, and I think this is a guy that's going to be able to come in and he's going to reach base a ton. He's, not going to hit 20 home runs or anything like that. But if he can come in and be like a 340 OBP guy with 12 to 15 home runs, like that's going to be a really valuable player. And especially if they're going to have him playing in center field a little bit, there's a chance that he is a really key part of this lineup as the middle of the summer approaches.
I don't want to say that you're expecting a lot out of him, but it sounds like you expect something out of him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's a really unique player, and I think you mentioning his age is really important because this is a guy who's like basically he has to hit the ground running, right? Or else he's gonna be back in AAA as a 25-year-old going on 26, and as you reach those ages as a prospect, right? Like if he's 25 and 26, Vlad and Bo have been in the big leagues for like 7 years at this point, and they're also 26 and 27. So there's not a lot of time for him realistically long term. He still is very young just in general, but for a baseball prospect, like this is the time that he needs to make an impact. And I do think that he does have a good chance of at least being like a Spencer Horwitz type.
I was just going to quickly add on that to end this. Do you think like with Dalton Varsho out for the I think first month of the season is what we're expecting, if he doesn't get off to a great run and like Varsho comes back, do you think like that's kind of where like the benchmark will be, like when Varsho comes back, how is Roden performing, and that will determine the rest of his season in the big leagues type deal?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I think there are so many guys that kind of play into that with Miles Straw and Nathan Lucas making the roster as well, right? Like I think the easy thing to say is Dalton Varsho comes back and Nathan Lucas goes down, just because Miles Straw does have the speed and the defense value to kind of be like your 26 man, your late inning replacement type. And Nathan Lucas is kind of that, but basically a little bit worse. So I think like that's
Michael Straw.
That's maybe not where you want to be in your career, but I guess it's fair to say, kind of. Man, that's got disappointing. I feel so bad for Nathan Lucas. Like this is totally like off conversation, but Nathan Lucas, like this is a 30-year-old prospect who has never really gotten his shot, and now we're like, are you or Miles Straw going to be the 26th man? It's tough go for that guy. But yeah, I think when Varsho comes back, Roden will kind of, if he's playing well, then you kind of zone in on those other two. But if Roden isn't playing well, then I think, you kind of look at like Varsho comes back and maybe Barger comes up and Roden and Lucas go down or something like that.
Yeah, one guy we haven't talked about, I'm surprised it's taken this long as we make our way around the roster, is the most recent extension for Alejandro Kirk, 26-year-old catcher. Maybe not the same expectations that Alan Roden might have this year after that conversation, but a guy that obviously is clearly a key piece for the Jays. So where do you think Jays fans are at with Alejandro Kirk? Do you think that after this signing, 5 years, $58 million, do you think there's more offensive expectations from him this year? Where do you think he kind of fits into that batting lineup? And kind of where are you at with Alejandro Kirk moving forward?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we touched on Nathan Lucas before Alejandro Kirk. I think really important to the 2025 Blue Jays. No, Alejandro Kirk, you know what? The thing about him is that he's sneakily maybe the most important Blue Jay this year, because if he doesn't perform well, if he gets hurt, they are in a really tough spot. They do not have any catching depth. Tyler Heineman is your backup, and I think he's fine as a backup, but beyond him, there is not much. And if if Alejandro Kirk gets hurt, if Alejandro Kirk doesn't play well, you can't turn to anybody else. And if he misses any time, then, Tyler Heineman, it's not a 130 game guy, right? So the extension, really happy for Kirk. I think, well deserved. He's worked really hard on his defense and become one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, which as a catcher is the most important thing for him. But the ceiling there is so much more, and that's what we've been waiting for the past couple of years. Obviously, we saw it in 2022, the All-Star season that he had, the Silver Slugger season. Yeah. And you know what? The powers, I don't think he's ever going to hit more than 10-ish home runs, and I don't think that we're going to see him, crack 20 or maybe even 15. But for a guy who, what you want from him is a guy that hits the ball hard and is able to get on base. Obviously, the base running does limit him a little bit, but for a guy, the defense is just so important to the position and to this team. It's going to be a really interesting storyline to follow this year to see how he does handle a 100 plus game workload, because he's never had that before. So yeah, the extension kind of signals that they're confident that he is able to handle that. And you know what, we'll see. I think he's going to be an interesting player to check in on by like game 75, just to see how things are progressing. I don't think, what we saw him in spring training, like smacking balls all around the yard. Like he was, posting some great exit velocities, hitting the ball hard. I think by the end of the year, we might wear that out of him a little bit. But if he's able to maintain his defense and at least kind of give you around a league average bat, I think, that's kind of all you can ask for him, especially considering the situation that they have behind the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. The most important Blue Jay, you don't really think about it when you look at the guys around the lineup, but that does make a lot of sense in terms of the depth at that position. So I like that breakdown. We'll finish with a fun one here, Zach. So this tweet here and these numbers are courtesy of Blue Jays Always on X. And basically there's a couple of milestones that Jays are set to hit this year if all goes well. Some of these I'll pose to you and I'll ask you if they will, based on how many numbers away they are from this milestone. If they are set to hit it this year, I want you to let me know if you think that they will hit said milestone. Okay. So cool. Some of them are very easy, and I'm hoping that these players will hit them, but we have to run them through. I'll start with those ones there. So Andrés Giménez is 100. His next milestone is 100 stolen bases. He is one stolen base away. Do you think he will get there?
I thought you were saying 100 stolen bases in the season. I was like, no. I don't know. That might be pushing it. I'll give you a hot take on this. Andrés Giménez steals that base today.
Okay. I really like that. I like that. We'll take it. We'll watch it.
That's a good idea.
Bo is 7 home runs away from 100. Is it safe to say that he gets there this year if he stays healthy?
Yes, I don't think he'll do that today, but I think he is going to hit 7 home runs this year.
That would be monstrous. We might have to do an emergency pod should that happen. Anthony Santander is 65 RBIs away from 500. Do you think he hits 65 this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think pretty easily he's going to be in a great spot to kind of drive into some hitters. So I think absolutely 65. Hopefully we get there.
Another pretty straightforward one, I think, if he stays healthy. Opening day starter Jose Barrios is 94.1 innings pitched away from 1,500. I think if he stays on track, he's set to hit that. Do you think you'd agree?
Yep, totally. I think he's a guy who he's missed like 3 starts ever. So feel pretty confident that he's going to be in the 180 to 190 range again.
And he is starting today, as we mentioned. He's one way a win from 100 on the career. So I think we might have 2 milestones if Giménez can get on the Jets today, which is cool. Just a couple more here, and one you already sort of answered, so we'll kind of blow by it, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. Max Scherzer is 122 innings pitched away from 3,000. I know the over-under sort of set at 130 for him this year. Do you think he gets that 122 if you had to put your kind of best thoughts on it right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough because that's
know.
right around that point where you're like, I don't know if he's going to get there.
Exactly.
You know what? It's opening day. Feeling optimistic. Let's say he gets there. I don't know how
love
many
it.
more he'll get there, but I think, you know what, 122, he'll kind of land in that range.
I think so. I think that'll be an interesting milestone to chase. I think knowing him
Yeah.
and obviously his success, if he's close, he'll battle. So hopefully we'll
Yeah.
give it to him. And then just last one is a two-parter for Vladdy. So he's 95 hits away from 1,000, and he's 40 home runs away from 200. So 40 this year for home runs, 95 for hits. Do either of those milestones get hit for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this season?
I'll say hits yes, homers no.
Okay.
I think
that's fair.
I mean, 40 home runs, tough thing to do. We've seen him do it before, but yeah, you know what? I think he's probably kind of pretty settled at like a 30 home run guy.
That's fair. Good stuff. Well, either way,
Yeah,
Zach,
yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to join us on opening day. Obviously, really exciting. Hopefully, you're just as jazzed up as we are, if not more.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. Hopefully, you get a chance to watch the games and kind of dial in. And other than that, thank you for joining us again and enjoy opening day yourself.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, guys, appreciate you having me on. Always great to chat ball, and hope you guys enjoy the season, and best of luck with the podcast and everything.
Awesome. Thanks again. To Zach Worden for joining us today. Opening day for the Blue Jays and for the majority of MLB teams. So probably a busy day for him, but awesome that he was able to join us before opening the first pitch, I should say. And just kind of sticking with the theme of baseball, I asked him a couple of questions. We got into some questions on some of the players in the team and brought this up, but I want to pose the same question to you guys. Vladdy is 40 home runs away from 200 and had an incredible season last year. Basically an MVP style. Obviously didn't get to that level, but it's to the point of like he's obviously at his highest peak right now. Do you think that he's at the same caliber this year and will hit 40 home runs for 200? Or do you think that there's just too much distraction off the field? Justin, let's pose this one to you here first.
I think that he's gonna hit 50. I think he's gonna get to that
Okay.
50 benchmark, and he's gonna have a great offensive season. He's playing in a contract year. If you want to, raise your price, just like Juan Soto did, you have to perform at the highest. And I think if he performs like we know that he can, I think he's gonna hit 50, and I think he's gonna have like 120 RBIs this year.
Okay.
I can see that. I think the offensive upside is like there before the beginning of in the beginning of last year he struggled. It depends on how he gets off to another start this year. If he struggles at the start and then picks it up again, we'll probably only see those 40 home runs. But if he starts out the way he ended last year and continues to build on that, I think that we're going to see a very, very monster year for Vlad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's definitely possible that he hits the 40. I'd say it's more on the improbable side just because he's only done that once, I believe, in his career. And I think it was the 2021 season, his best season of his career by far. I think he had 48 that year. And I definitely expect him to be around 30, 35 and get to over 100 RBIs again. But that just doesn't seem to be his profile anymore. Is he's not a huge, like he still is going to hit a ton of home runs, but he's not that big bopper that you're going to see, the Judges or the Otanis. You're not going to see him. I don't think you're going to see Vlad get to 50. I think 40 is a reasonable number that he could approach through the end of the season, as long as he stays healthy and he's, like you said, Justin, having a good kind of career year. Be the perfect time for him, of course, to do that and cash in on his contract next season. But I think he might get close, but I'd be surprised, I'd say, if he were to get 40, at least, depending on the way exactly that it went down.
Yeah, I'm closer to saying that 40 is like within reach, but I just don't know if he is someone who can like kind of block out all of the drama. I know there was a lot of just discussion of like what was offered, what wasn't offered to him in the offseason before his self-imposed deadline, and whether we believe one side or the other. Like the idea that the discussion, he wanted to set this self-imposed deadline. He did, and the team obviously respected it. It got to the point where now they're not negotiating. But all that to say, like, it just feels like he's someone who might not be able to block all this out. I hope that he is. I hope that he's able to sort of move forward, and whether it's just for the success of himself, looking to free agency, or success of the team, that he focuses on baseball more specifically this season. I'm curious to see if he can. I think it's going to be a bit of a like 50-50, maybe he will, maybe he won't type situation for both the Jays and for Vladdy to be like, well, we can be comfortable with him leaving, or some fans being like, oh, well, we'd rather he stay. So
Career
I'd be happy if he does. I'm just not confident.
career year though, 48 home runs
Yeah.
in 2021. So that's he's already hit the 40 mark. He's hit the 30 mark 3 times. Yeah, I think the 40 mark is definitely in reach for him this year.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to see. It'll be fun to watch, hopefully. And honestly, I'm rooting for him, even if he is gonna step away at the end of the year. We trade him. Like he's done a lot here already. We got some crazy news this morning. We're gonna switch topics to hockey. We were discussing kind of what we wanted to talk about in terms of topics when we hopped on here today, and like 10 minutes before we did, we're like, all right, well, one thing is locked in for us in that John Tortorella, coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, was relieved of his duties. Interesting because Elliot Freeman tweeted that it looks like he was stepping down. I don't know if it was like a mutual decision, but the point is he will no longer be coaching the Philadelphia Flyers. I am not going to say I'm surprised, but I'm a little bit shocked that it happened as quick as it did. And there's a couple of factors in that manner. First of all, the Flyers have lost 11 of their last 12 games. Let's put that just bluntly. They put up 2 7-pieces against them in back-to-back evenings, Chicago being one of them, and then the Leafs on Tuesday night. Tortorella had some interesting comments, basically suggesting like I'm not interested in coaching this team for the rest of the year. If you read that on paper, it definitely sounds a little bit more malicious than he delivered them. I was listening to the interview. I just think he realized in the past he was riding his guys a little bit too heavy and decided I'm just going to let this go. These guys are already morally probably in the dumpster right now. He's coached over 1,600 games and has never, this is an interesting one, he's never missed the playoffs with the same team in 3 straight seasons, and he was headed towards that this year before being let go.
Wow.
Reactions to this, guys? Did you see this coming, Brandon? Let's throw this one to you here.
I mean, I think you could tell that the writing was on the wall in terms of, I don't know that he would have made it to next season with the Flyers. I know he had 1 year left on his contract, but it definitely seemed that the trajectory of the team had changed a lot, especially throughout this season. I think last year that team was a bit of a surprise. You know, they pushed for the playoffs. I was just looking it up here. They had 87 points. They were just 4 points out of the playoffs. This year, it looked like they were going to kind of hang around that wild card spot, at least early on in the season. And then I don't know what it was, but something just happened where that team just started to look more and more like it did in Torts' first kind of start with the Flyers. So I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that something was going to happen, and the way that Torts was speaking and the way that the team was playing, I think it was becoming clear that they were no longer, whether you want to say that the team was no longer listening to his message or that they just weren't capable of continuing to play the style that he was preaching. But either way, it seems like the fit just wasn't there anymore. And I don't know if we'll see Torts again. You know, he tends to kind of spot up at in these random jobs sometimes. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it's tough to see a guy like that, like Torts. I think everybody knows the kind of the genuineness of the coach and everything that he stands for. So it's tough when you see something that doesn't work out, because you just love to see the Flyers, especially a team with their history, kind of have a guy like Torts who can really push the envelope and try to get these guys back to a good situation with the organization. So yeah, I think you could see it coming, but it is a bit.
I don't think like Torts was going to last either, Brandon, in terms of next year, only because we know that Rick Tocchet, his deal is up at the end of this year, and he hasn't signed an extension. He's one of the best coaches in the NHL, and he's from Philly, which just clears the way for Philly and all the rumors that were already starting about Rick Tocchet going to Philly. This just makes it more evident that that is a real possibility to happen now. But in terms of Torts, when we think about it, like, were we really thinking this team was a playoff team this year? Like, they weren't. They were sellers at the deadline. They fully bought into this rebuild and like said this is going to be another year of the rebuild. I don't think this was really like a Torts on Torts. I think this is just freeing that position up for the future and trying to get Rick Tocchet to be your head coach for the future. It would be funny if Torts and Tocchet swapped roles.
Yeah.
That'd be Elias Pettersson's worst nightmare coming to fruition. John Tortorella, if he thinks Rick Tocchet's hard on him, John Tortorella would wake him up.
He knows the market. He's been there before,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, he has. But I personally don't think Tortorella did a terrible job with this team. I don't think this team was built for success in the time that he was there, but I understand where the franchise is going in terms of the decision to let him go at this point with Tocchet coming available.
I didn't even think of that. That aspect of it does make some sense, like pieces being in the right places of the puzzle. What I'll say that kind of like as an LA Chargers fan, 2 seasons ago or not this past season, the season prior, where Brandon Staley was someone who was kind of on the rocks. He had changed his mindset in terms of how he coached. And then they got completely dismantled by the Vegas Raiders, which to their account were not a great team. It was like what, the 60 to like 18 or 20 game.
Yeah, it was
And
not good.
everyone knew the writing was on the wall. He got fired the next day. Wasn't even like a couple days later. The way that the Philadelphia Flyers, I didn't watch Sunday's game. They played Chicago, but they lost 7-4.
That was
You
on
can't
goal.
let Chicago.
That was
You can't let
goaltending.
Chicago put up 7.
That was
Yeah.
the goaltending in that game was so bad. Like I was watching that game and it was
Yeah.
so bad. Like that.
Fedotov, I picked him up. I said this in the I think the hockey show. I picked him up in fantasy to try and get a win so that I could move on to the semifinals or finals in a different fantasy league. And Fedotov let 7 goals in, and I was like, this was never meant to be. And then actually watching and dissecting Philly's performance on Tuesday against the Leafs, it was maybe the worst performance I've seen a team play in the entire league the whole year. Like out of position constantly. Every player just looked like they weren't invested. Like it just didn't seem like they had any fight in them. And you just know that sometimes the coach's message just falls on deaf ears. And I agree with you, Brandon. I just don't know if Torts has if his style is the same in this NHL anymore. If it doesn't work in Philly and they can't kind of stick with his message, I don't know where else would fit. It's not on him. I hear he's a great person. Obviously, he's like an electric factory in front of the mic, but I hear he's a very good person off the ice. But I just don't know if that's the way it's going to work. I'm interested to see how Matvei Mishkov is working moving forward, because first-year player, having your coach leave halfway through the year might sound great, but then you have a new system to end the year and a new system to start the season. So I'm really curious to see how it affects a player like that with a coaching change so early in his career. But I do see maybe it was time to move on. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you're right.
Yeah. In terms of switching sports, we're all over the place. But to be fair, that's the calendar. That's the way the calendar is this year in terms of sports. Is March Madness. First 4 games finished and concluded on first 4 days of games, I should say, concluded last Sunday. So we're off to the Sweet 16, actually starting as we're recording today in a couple hours. A lot of people were a little bit upset because the term March Madness didn't really describe the way the tournament fell this year. All 1 seeds are still in. It looks like it's going to be a top-heavy set of games to kind of close off Sweet 16 heading into the Final 4. I know I still enjoyed it myself, but a lot of people were like, where's the madness? The only underdog team still in it are the 10th-ranked Arkansas Razorbacks, who were coached by John Calipari, who really isn't an underdog in himself. He is a very good coach. What did you guys think of the first 4 games? Like, I enjoyed them, but was there a narrative of like maybe it would have been cool to have some more upsets?
I thought it was good. I thought that Derek Queen game winner, when everyone wanted a buzzer beater, they finally got one, and then they say he traveled. Like, he might have traveled, but like no one calls that, and you're especially not calling that at that point in the game. So if you're anyone but a Colorado State fan, why are you complaining about that? That was my opinion on that, because like realistically, he wanted the madness. There's the madness. It was an electric shot. He's fading away to his back while trying to beat the buzzer. That's impressive. And then other than that, I thought the games were good. And when you look at the rest of this like games, you just have to understand the games are only going to get better. Like, you're not looking at a potential blowout from a Cinderella story in the Elite Eight, because they're end runs and they stop playing great basketball for the 2 games that they played great basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to get top-end teams against top-end teams now. And if you're going to blame anyone, blame NIL. Blame the fact that all these Power 5 schools can go out there and spend $20 million a season and get the guys that they want to get. Because that's what's happening. They're just plucking them off the guys that, the smaller schools that these guys used to make runs with. That's what's happening. So I don't know. It's good, and it's also bad, because everyone likes the upsets, everyone likes the drama, but I also want to see good basketball down the stretch. And I think the best basketball is with the best teams. So give me that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Justin. I think that the risk of upsets early in the tournament, I think you hit it right on the head, is that it leads to, I think, potential blowouts later in the tournament when you would want to see those closer games. So I think having some of the best teams still alive in the tournament and having maybe a more tighter field in terms of the higher ranked seeds still playing in the Sweet 16 and beyond, I think that will lead to prosperity in the future in terms of the best competition, the best type of excitement in some of these later games in the tournament. But for me, watching that Arkansas St. John's game was fantastic for that exact reason. It's just that it was two teams that, regardless of their rank, seemed to be pretty evenly matched, and they both had fantastic coaches. They both were doing it. Both teams were doing everything they can. There was drama with
The fact that
St. John's, top player RJ Lewis not really playing much in the clutch minutes. So there was always like that kind of
classic Patino.
Yeah, like there was just that kind of fun March Madness type of conversation around that game, and everyone was kind of locked in on at that point probably the biggest upset of the tournament. So I think it's always good to see one or two teams that can actually play with some of the top dogs make it through. But I think like watching some of these blue bloods, want to see like Duke and Florida and Auburn, want to see them eventually hopefully go up against each other and prove which of these teams are truly the best in the country.
And I think like the other thing with that game was St. John's could not shoot the ball, and neither could Arkansas. Like they went 4 for 41 from 3. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's
and that's what it comes down to a lot of times, right? It's
They
like
couldn't shoot.
you got one game, if you can't hit those shots as a team, it's likely that you're going home, and it doesn't really matter who's on the other side. If they get hot or whatever the case is, matchups come into play. College is such a different game than the NBA, but it's always fun to see those type of games really play out, and when there's just so much desperation and madness, right? Like that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely still excited. I think there's a lot of good basketball to be played, and like you guys were saying, like the more exciting matchups will come. And I'm gonna watch as much as possible between March Madness and the Jays game today. I think it'll be a fun slate of games all around. It'll be kind of a Jays sandwich between March Madness, so that'll be cool. And just kind of a last topic that we wanted to get to here was the QB room in New York, which looked completely different. Looked completely different a couple of months ago, but I don't know if we talked about the original signing, so we'll get to that first. Jameis Winston did sign with the New York Giants about a week ago for a 1-year contract. And then I think it was either yesterday or the day prior, some of the news is confusing to me, but Russell Wilson. Tuesday? Russell Wilson finally making his decision. I know he visited a couple different teams, including Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns, but deciding to also sign with the New York Giants for a deal up to $21 million for the year. Not surprising that Russell Wilson picked one of these two teams. It kind of just opens the door now for Aaron Rodgers, and not opens the door, kind of forces him through one door. Like, dude, it's the Steelers or not.
I don't know.
All that to say,
as well.
I don't think the Vikings want him is the thing. But in terms of Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, like, do any of these signings surprise you? Are they exciting? Brandon, let's go to you. Like, what do you think of both of these signings, specifically the Russell Wilson one more recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't so surprised that Russ ended up there. I think the writing was on the wall kind of with Pittsburgh. I think they weren't likely to bring him back. And like you said, with Rodgers, there just aren't too many other options to go to. So I think it made sense. There's a bit of a fit there with Malik Neighbors. Russ still has a pretty strong arm, and he can get the ball down the field for him. So there may be some plays to be made there, but I would just say I was more surprised that they brought in both Russ and Jameis Winston, just because, it seemed like they might try to maneuver into one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. And that, to me, at least, these moves kind of take that off the table.
Yeah.
I don't see the point of bringing in two more established guys. Like if they had signed like a Tim Boyle or something alongside Russ, I'd been like, okay, they could still bring in a young guy and try to build him up for next year or the year after, whatever the case is. But with Jameis in there now too, and you have the two kind of established guys, I don't see them going after another young quarterback. Maybe they'll wait till the next year when there's maybe a few other guys that they're looking at, but yeah, it was just kind of an interesting move, and I'm not sure what to make of the Giants going forward right now. They seem to be stuck in kind of a weird limbo where they're not really sure how to move forward. They have a couple good pieces, but it might take a couple of years for that team to really start to come together again.
I kind of like it, only because, listen, do we really think that these quarterbacks are top notch in Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward? Like, are you guys like all over these guys? Like, oh, this is gonna be next NFL great?
Not really. They're
Okay,
not
so
that highly
No,
touted.
and
They are,
I
but I don't know if they're like.
no,
yeah.
and I
I think
agree.
Cam Ward could be really good, but I don't think that
Yeah.
they're likely to be able to even get a sniff at him. So we'll
Yeah.
see. Like that.
But
could
like
be
I
it too.
agree. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like I don't think that they're that great. Like I don't think they're like last year's quarterbacks coming into the draft. 2026 has some pretty good quarterbacks coming to the draft with Drew Aller, number one guy, probably coming out next year. So if you don't like what you see right now, why waste a pick on it this year? Why not sign a bridge guy, which is what they did, and maybe you draft Travis Hunter, or maybe you draft Abdul Carter, or maybe you draft, if he falls to you, Cam Ward, but like I don't think he is. Like I don't think that's ever gonna happen. If you want Cam Ward, then sure, but I don't think they do. But I think more realistically, they're going to draft either Carter or a Hunter, and I think that they're going to wait till next year to draft someone. So I like the move of bringing one of them in. The part that doesn't make sense to me is why you brought both of them in, and then you have Tommy DeVito on top of that. So that part made no sense. And then the other thing I saw, and I think this eliminates them from that conversation now as well, is trading back into the first round to draft Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I did see that in a couple mock drafts, them trading back in later in the draft or later in the first round to get him. But yeah, I don't see that happening anymore with this move. Overall, Russell Wilson probably gets another year starting at quarterback in the NFL before he's probably eventually pushed out after this year, I would assume. And for fantasy owners, I think you have to be pretty upset. Like Jameis and Malik Neighbors would have been amazing. Would have been amazing. But Russell Wilson, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be that good. But yeah, I don't know. What, like, do you guys like think that, like, realistically, basically what I'm just trying to say is, in short term, I think the Giants were smart. Like, do you guys agree with that, or do you think that like they didn't make a great decision here by signing Russell Wilson basically as a bridge quarterback?
No, I think it's fine. I think if you're looking at the locker room, I'd probably rather would have Russell Wilson than Aaron Rodgers in terms of like a locker room person. Just too much nonsense from both quarterbacks, really. But Russell Wilson's more of like a positive nonsense. Like, yeah, it might be a little corny, but I don't think it like reverberates throughout the dressing room of like a negative attitude, where it's been pretty much proven that Aaron Rodgers, not a great guy in terms of at least like locker room stuff. Just, yeah, like, don't know him, so obviously I'm not going to comment like to be like this guy sucks, but I think from what you've seen, it seems like he can cause some drama.
Complete
and Jameis
cancer.
Winston,
Complete cancer.
but Jameis Winston is awesome.
Yeah.
And I would like, he's such a great guy that maybe he is just a backup, and like that's what his role is. I'm happy to just be happy, fun locker room guy, and that's why they signed me for what is like $3 million. I don't think he got paid like a crazy amount for at least for NFL standards, but I like it.
Did you guys see the meme someone made? The Giants QB locker room talks, and they like
like a
bunch.
Like the three of them like randomly talking back and forth, but it was like just clips of the three of them. It's very good.
Yeah, it was so good, so good. That like that locker room, they need to mic that locker room up like full time, like just like have.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll be waiting for Russ's next catchphrase for the Giants.
It's already out. It's already out. You didn't hear it? Go Blue.
Ahead. Let's hear it.
That actually
I was hoping it'd be like, Giants country, let's grow.
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping.
That's not bad.
Grow like Giants. I don't know.
He said, "Let's go Big Blue," even though Big Blue is Michigan. So
yeah, isn't that Michigan? Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So Russ, you got to change it. Let's go with "Let's grow."
Yeah, let's grow. I like it. Awesome. So it'll be fun to watch them this year, at least more fun to watch than last year with Daniel Jones for the majority of the season. So exciting for them. Anybody have any second looks before we kind of wrap things up here, guys? Justin, do you have one in mind in terms of taking a second look
I have
here?
a team. The Calgary
Okay.
Flames, man. Well, like, what in the world is this team? Like, they can't win a game, comeback game for the whole season, and then these last 4 games, they make 4 comebacks in a row. Nazem Kadri has 2 overtime winners in a row. Like, is this team destiny? Like, is what's happening? Like, are they not going to lose for the rest of the season? Like, if they win it out, and say St. Louis wins out, they make it. So it's all in their hands. Everything's in their hands, and I'm looking at every single Calgary Flame game because it is entertaining. Like, it is now amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually going to say not the Flames, but sticking out west in the NHL, I was going to say the Winnipeg Jets. Just clinched the first team in the NHL to clinch a playoff spot. Looking like that first seed in the West is going to be theirs again. And yeah, just hoping for a good run from the Jets this year. I think they've had some obviously disappointments in the past in the playoffs when they've looked like they could go on a deep run, and obviously we had Edmonton last year go to the finals. That maybe the Jets could be this year's team in the West from Canada to push through. I just am loving the way that they're playing and think that they should be a force to be reckoned with once they get to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. They're a fun team. I won't pick a team, but I'll stick with hockey. I'll pick a player, and Mikko Rantanen. This guy's had an insane season. He took a puck off the face a couple of nights ago, and if you take a second look at his face, he was sporting a nice bubble.
Not good.
And not ideal. The poor guy's been on 3 teams this year. He's been a scrutiny. He's been hated by 2 franchises. And now he took a puck off the face. I think it was like it was like a shot from Ilya Lyubushkin. I think that beamed him. So hopefully he's fine. I think he played yesterday against the Oilers, so I think he's fine. Obviously, he's a hockey player.
He's the one who injured Stuart Skinner.
There you go. Yeah, see, I didn't end up watching the late night ones, but it's like the guy's just public enemy number 1 pretty much everywhere. And the poor Finnish player is just probably the nicest guy in the world, and he's just taking the brunt of it, including a puck to the face. So let's hope he has more success in the playoffs this year, but we'll see. Otherwise, guys, great episode. Touched a lot of topics. Thanks again to Zach Worden for joining us. Excited for opening day. And hopefully you guys get a chance to watch and enjoy. And otherwise, guys, we will kind of catch you next week. Probably more Blue Jays and baseball talk. And we'll get to you then. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you another time.